There is a deeply ingrained American myth that says the only acceptable direction in life is up. More money, a bigger title, a larger house, a newer car. We are conditioned to believe that if we aren't constantly climbing, we are failing. But for many people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, the top of the ladder turns out to be a miserable, exhausting place. You look around at the life you sacrificed your youth to build, and you realize you are too stressed, too burnt out, and too sick to actually enjoy any of it. Yet, the idea of stepping down, of choosing a smaller, simpler life, feels like a terrifying admission of defeat. Here is a 7-minute story about the gritty, deeply uncomfortable, and ultimately life-saving reality of the Great Downshift. The radical decision to redefine success and buy back your peace. The story, the courage to step down, the trap. Meet James. At 49, James had won the American dream. He was a regional vice president for a massive logistics firm. He had a sprawling house in a wealthy suburb, 2 luxury cars in the driveway, and a salary that made his peers deeply envious. But the reality of James's life was a slow-motion heart attack. He slept for hours a night. His phone was a permanent extension of his hand, vibrating with emergencies at 11 p.m. on Saturdays. He had missed his daughter's high school graduation dinner because of an urgent supply chain crisis. He took blood pressure medication, heartburn medication, and anxiety medication just to function. James was miserable, but he felt utterly trapped. His massive income was entirely consumed by his massive lifestyle. He wore his exhaustion like a badge of honor, convinced that this punishing grind was just what being a successful adult required. The turning point, the bonus check, the wake-up call didn't happen in a hospital bed. It happened in a boardroom. It was the end of a record-breaking quarter. James's boss handed him an envelope containing the largest bonus check of his entire career. James looked at the number he had spent 20 years bleeding for, and he felt absolutely nothing. No joy, no relief, just a cold, heavy wave of total apathy. He walked out to his luxury car, sat in the leather seat, and did the math. He calculated the hours he had worked that year, the stress he had absorbed, and the moments with his family he had permanently missed. He realized he wasn't wealthy. He was just highly paid labor. He was trading the irreplaceable hours of his one, finite life to buy things he didn't have the time to enjoy. He realized that if he didn't get off the treadmill, he was going to die on it. Phase 1. The terrifying brake pedal. You cannot simply downshift without massive friction. The system is designed to keep you climbing. When James told his wife he needed to walk away from his career, there were tears and panic. When he handed in his resignation, his boss didn't understand. He just offered him more money, assuming it was a negotiation tactic. But James held firm. He and his wife sold the massive suburban house and bought a modest, older home in a smaller, slower-paced town 2 hours away. They sold the luxury cars and bought reliable, used vehicles. James took a job managing operations for a local, family-owned distribution center. It paid exactly half of what he used to make. To the outside world, and to his former colleagues, James was having a midlife crisis. They whispered that he couldn't hack the pressure anymore. The social friction was intense. James had to watch his hard-earned status evaporate overnight. Phase 2, the adrenaline withdrawal. The hardest part of the downshift wasn't the loss of income, it was the withdrawal from hustle culture. For the first 6 months in his new life, James was restless and irritable. He was addicted to the cortisol and adrenaline of constant corporate fires. When he clocked out at 5 p.m. and his new boss told him to go home and ignore his email, James felt useless. He felt lazy. His entire identity for 25 years had been tied to being the guy who solved multi-million-dollar problems at midnight. Without the title and the crises, he was forced to sit in the quiet with himself. He had to face the terrifying question, who am I if I am not James the VP? Phase 3, the awakening. But slowly, the quiet stopped being terrifying and started being medicinal. About a year into his new life, James woke up on a Tuesday and realized his jaw wasn't clenched. He stopped needing the heartburn medication. He started cooking dinner with his wife on weeknights, sexually chopping vegetables and talking, rather than eating takeout over a laptop keyboard. He realized that his new, smaller job wasn't a failure, it was a boundary. He brought his decades of expertise to the local company, made their operations highly efficient, and then went home. He had traded the prestige of a corporate title for the ultimate luxury, sovereignty over his own time. The resolution, the real currency. Fast forward to James at 54. 5 years after stepping off the cliff. He doesn't wear tailored suits anymore. He wears jeans and work boots. His house doesn't impress anybody when they drive by, but his eyes are clear, his laugh is loud, and his blood pressure is perfectly normal. When he looks at his old colleagues on LinkedIn, he doesn't feel a shred of envy. He sees the bags under their eyes and the forced smiles. James realized that the American dream is a baton switch. Real wealth isn't measured by what you can buy. It's measured by what you can refuse. He had the courage to step down, and in doing so, he finally got his life back. Your title is not your identity. If losing your job title makes you feel like a nobody, you have outsourced your self-worth to a corporation that would replace you in a week. Status is the most expensive thing you will ever buy. Maintaining the appearance of success, the cars, the zip code, the private schools, is often what keeps you locked in a miserable career. Let the ego go, and you instantly become free. Prepare for the withdrawal. Hustle is an addiction. When you finally slow down, you will feel guilty, lazy, and anxious. That is not a sign you made a mistake. That is the sound of the detox working. Time is the only non-renewable resource. You can always find a way to make another dollar, but you cannot buy back a single hour. Treat your time as your most fiercely guarded asset. Do not spend the second half of your life exhausting yourself to maintain a lifestyle you don't even have the energy to enjoy. There is profound, rebellious power in choosing enough over more.